My wife cheated on me with her boss, then convinced me to sign over our $300, $0 house and $150, $0 savings during a divorce that was really their plan, and now she's suing me for half the business profits. What the hell is happening? I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here writing about how my wife turned out to be a complete betrayal machine. Honestly, I thought we had the perfect life, 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs. She was the kind of woman who looked at you with those big blue eyes and made you feel like you were the luckiest guy alive. But then all of it started unraveling. And it happened so fast, I barely had time to process what was happening. It all started a few months ago. Was acting just a little off, but I figured it was work stress or maybe her period. She'd come home late sometimes, smelling different, like perfume she didn't usually wear, or maybe some kind of men's cologne. She'd brush it off when I asked, calling me paranoid or insecure. She'd say I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. That was her go-to line whenever she got caught in some lie. Then I started noticing her phone. She'd hide it more, always keeping it close, even sleeping with it under her pillow. I'd catch her texting late at night, quick to shut the screen when I entered the room. It was small stuff at first, but enough to make me suspicious. I thought maybe I was just overthinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One day, I decided to check her messages when she went to the grocery store. I know, that's not exactly heroic, but I was desperate for answers, and what I found made my stomach drop. There were texts between her and her boss, Mark, that were, well, not exactly innocent. They were flirtatious, suggestive even. She was calling him babe and saying she couldn't wait to see him again. She was talking about how she loved the way he made her feel, how she was so tired of pretending around me. It was like reading a script for a bad soap opera, but it was real. That was the moment I realized my wife, my partner, had been cheating on me with her boss for knows how long. I felt numb, like my world was collapsing. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I just sat there, stunned. I kept rereading those messages, trying to find some sign I'd missed, some way to deny what was staring me right in the face. But there was no denying it. Was screwing Mark behind my back, and she had been for months. I knew I had to confront her. The thing was, I'd always trusted her. We'd had disagreements here and there, sure, but I never thought she'd cheat on me. Not with someone like her boss. Mark was a slick, charming guy, but also a total snake. I'd met him a few times, and I could see the way he looked at her, like he was already planning their future together. That annoyed me more than anything. The fact that she was so blatant about cheating, and she didn't even care if I found out. When I finally brought it up, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat her down in the living room, my hands trembling, my voice shaking. I told her I knew about her affair, showed her the messages. Her face didn't even flicker with remorse. Instead, she rolled her eyes, scoffed, and said I was crazy, that it was all a misunderstanding, that Mark was just a business associate, and that I was paranoid and insecure. She called me paranoid for snooping, for doubting her. She said I was overreacting, that she loved me, that it was just sex, and that it meant nothing. But I saw right through her lies. Her tone was defensive, her eyes darted around, and I knew she'd been lying from the start. That moment was like a punch to the gut. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and confusion. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we had built? I looked at her, realizing that my wife had been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, and now she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. The emotional fallout was immediate. I felt like I was in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was angry, so angry I wanted to scream. But I also felt hurt, betrayed, like I'd been punched in the stomach. It was like I'd been living in a bubble and someone had just burst it. I didn't sleep that night, just lying there, replaying everything in my head. Her sneaky texts, her fake apologies, her dismissive attitude when I confronted her. It was like I'd been hit by a freight train, and I didn't even know where to start picking up the pieces. After that, I started noticing even more things. She was increasingly dismissive, calling me insecure or jealous whenever I brought up her behavior. She'd say I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, but I knew the truth, I just didn't know what to do with it. I felt lost, betrayed, and more than anything, stupid for not seeing it sooner. How could I have missed all the signs? How could I have trusted her after everything? I knew I had to make some decisions. I couldn't keep living with this secret weight on my chest, but I also didn't want to just jump into some impulsive action. I needed to think, to plan. Because I also found out something else, something that changes everything. Had convinced me to sign over our house, worth about $300, $0, and she'd gotten me to put our savings into her name, about $150, $0. She told me it was for our future, that she wanted to start a business with Mark, that it would be a good investment. But now I realize it was all part of her plan. She wanted to control everything, including my money, so she could run off with her lover and leave me holding the bag. It's a lot to process. My wife turned out to be a total bitch, lying, cheating, manipulating. And she's now trying to squeeze me out of the business profits, claiming she's entitled to half because she's contributing somehow. It's like she's trying to steal my life from under me. I never thought I'd end up here in this mess, feeling like I'd been sucker punched by the one person I trusted the most. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to get my life back, how to fight for what's mine, and how to move on from this betrayal. It's a nightmare I can't wake up from, but I know I have to face it somehow. After that night of revelations, things got uglier faster than I expected. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her dismissive smirk, the way she lied so effortlessly. I felt like I'd been hit by a ton of bricks, and honestly, I was furious. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her manipulate me into signing over our house and savings. She'd always been good at twisting things, making me doubt myself, but now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, calculating bitch who thought she could get away with anything. The next few days were a blur. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her bank accounts, anything I could find that might tell me what she was up to. It was like becoming a detective in my own life, and let me tell you, the things I uncovered only made my blood boil. She'd been secretly meeting Mark at fancy hotels, sometimes late at night. There were receipts, hotel bills, even photos she'd taken with him, smiling like they were the only two people in the world. I felt sick just looking at them. She'd lied so many times about her whereabouts, about her meetings, about everything. She'd told me she was working late, going to yoga, hanging out with her friends. All lies. But what really pushed me over the edge was discovering the extent of her scheme. I found out she'd convinced me to sign over our house during what she called a divorce. But it was all part of her plan to run off with Mark. She told me she'd keep the house, the savings, and the business they'd started working on together. She played me like a damn fiddle. She'd lied, manipulated, and all the while she was planning her escape with her boss. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left with nothing except this raw, burning rage. I confronted her again, this time with all the evidence spread out on the table. I told her I knew everything. Her face turned even more bitchy, her eyes narrowing. She spat back that I was paranoid, that I was crazy for accusing her of something so stupid. She told me I was overreacting, that I was just jealous because Mark was successful and more of a man than I'd ever be. That was her go-to: insult me, call me insecure, call me a loser. I could see right through her. She was trying to spin it, trying to make me feel guilty for catching her in the act, but I wasn't buying it anymore. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was in a war zone inside my own head. The anger, the betrayal, the shame, all colliding into one huge mess. I wanted to scream, to break something, to do something that would make her feel just a fraction of what I was feeling. But I kept it inside. I had to stay calm, think clearly. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about her stealing my life, my money, my future. She convinced me to sign over our house and savings, and now she was trying to claim half the business profits, saying she was entitled to it because she was contributing to the startup with Mark. That's when I realized I had to get serious. I couldn't just sit around and let her take everything. I started talking to a lawyer behind her back. I wanted to know my rights, what I could do to stop her from screwing me over even more. It turned out I had some leverage. She'd forged my signature on some documents, and I had proof of her affair which could be used against her in court. But the most shocking thing was how she kept lying, even when I had her cornered with evidence. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I was overreacting, that she loved me and only did this for us. that she was trying to save our marriage, but I knew better. Deep down, I knew this was about her greed and her obsession with Mark. She'd always been bitchy, manipulative, and now I saw her for what she really was, a user, a liar, a thief. I felt so betrayed that I started to question everything, our entire life together. How much of what I believed was real? Did she ever truly love me, or was I just a fool she used to get what she wanted? The worst part was realizing I was completely powerless in her eyes. She was smart, ruthless, and she knew how to play the victim when it suited her. She kept crying, saying she didn't mean to hurt me, that she was confused, that she'd made a mistake. Yeah, a mistake that cost me everything. I saw through her tears, those crocodile tears she threw out whenever she needed to manipulate me into doing what she wanted. It was all part of her game. Meanwhile, Mark was still in the picture, pushing her to finalize their plans. They'd already started working on some business venture, something about a marketing firm or some bullshit. She convinced me it was the future, that it would make us all rich. But I knew it was just her way of controlling more of my money, of setting herself up for an escape route. She'd always been good with money, spending, lying, scheming. But now I was starting to see how much she'd lied about everything, including how much she actually loved me. I decided I couldn't let her get away with it. I needed to fight back, legally and emotionally. I started gathering everything: bank statements, text messages, emails, even recordings of her conversations. I wanted to make sure she couldn't manipulate her way out of what she'd done. I also wanted to protect what was left of my assets. She convinced me to sign those papers, but I was beginning to realize I had some legal options. I wasn't going down without a fight. This whole thing has turned my world upside down. I feel like I've been played for a fool, and I can't shake the feeling of betrayal. I trusted, and she turned out to be a lying, cheating bitch who only cared about herself and her stupid affair with Mark. The worst part, I know she's probably laughing behind my back, thinking she's got me fooled again. But I've learned a lesson: never trust blindly, especially when someone's so good at pretending. I don't know what's coming next, but I do know I won't let her ruin me without a fight. After I started collecting evidence and talking to a lawyer, everything moved so quickly I barely had time to breathe. Of course, kept up her act, crying, acting innocent, saying she was so sorry and that I was overreacting again. She told me I was just insecure, that Mark was just a business partner, and that I was ruining our family with my paranoia. She spun stories so well I almost started to doubt myself. Almost, but deep down I knew the truth. I saw her for what she was: a manipulative, selfish woman who'd been screwing her boss behind my back and trying to squeeze me out of everything I worked for. The first real blow came when I discovered she had forged my signature on some legal documents. She managed to get me to sign papers transferring our house into her name during the divorce process, which was all part of her plan to run off with Mark. I was furious. When I confronted her with this, she just shrugged and said, "It's just paperwork, Jason. You signed it, remember? You said you were okay with it." I couldn't believe her audacity. She was lying straight to my face, trying to make me feel guilty for catching her. It was like she thought she could just manipulate her way out of everything, including my rights to our home. I called the lawyer immediately. We started working on stopping her from doing anything further, filing injunctions, freezing accounts, and preparing for a fight over the house and the business. But even as I did that, kept up her act, throwing fits, crying, saying she loved me and claiming she'd made a mistake. She insisted she only did it because she was confused, that she didn't mean to hurt me, and that Mark was just some guy who'd helped her with her career. Yeah, right, I knew better. I saw her texts, her hotel bills, her secret meetings. She was lying, and she knew it. What made it worse was how she tried to turn the kids against me. She'd tell them I was being mean, that I was trying to ruin their family, and that she was doing everything for us. She's good at playing the victim, and she knew I didn't want the kids to get caught in the middle. But I could see the damage she was doing, coaching them to think I was the bad guy, trying to make me look like the villain in their eyes. That's when I realized how much of a bitch she truly was, willing to use her own children to protect her lies. Meanwhile, Mark was pushing her even harder. They started their business venture, a marketing firm, and she kept telling me it was the future, that she was building something big. But I knew it was just her way of controlling the money, of setting herself up to leave me with nothing. She convinced me to sign over our house during the divorce process, claiming she'd just be using the money for the business. But now I see she was planning to run off with Mark all along. And the worst part, she's now suing me for half of the profits from their startup, claiming I have no right because I contributed to it. I was stunned when I read that lawsuit. I mean, she's trying to take half the profits from something she's been cheating on me to build with Mark. It's like she's trying to bleed me dry, even after everything she's done. I couldn't believe her audacity. She's claiming I have no claim because I supposedly agreed to her plans, but I have proof she lied to me, forged my signature, and manipulated me into signing those papers. I'm not going down without a fight. I also started to realize how deep her lies went. She'd been sneaking around for months, meeting Mark at fancy hotels, lying about where she was, and convincing herself that she was doing what's best for us. But I now see she was just trying to cover her tracks, keep me distracted while she plotted her escape. She told me she loved me, that she wanted to work things out, but her actions told a different story. Every day I felt more like a fool for trusting her in the first place. The emotional toll was crushing. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could she do this to us? How could she lie so convincingly, manipulate so well? I kept replaying everything in my head, her sneaky texts, her fake tears, her lies about saving the marriage. It was like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized how much she'd been planning this, how she'd been building her new life with Mark behind my back, while pretending everything was normal. At the same time, I started to question my own judgment. Did I miss all the signs? Was I blind to how bitchy and manipulative she'd become? I thought we had a good life, but now I see I was just too trusting, too naive. She played me for a fool, and now I was facing the aftermath. But I also knew I had to stand up for myself. I couldn't let her walk away with everything: my house, my savings, my business, my dignity. So I made a decision. I was going to fight her in court, expose her lies, and get back what was mine. I wasn't going to let her cheat me out of my life. I started working with a good lawyer, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I wanted to make sure she couldn't manipulate her way out of this, not this time. I also prepared myself emotionally for what was coming, knowing it wouldn't be easy. But I couldn't keep living in this nightmare of betrayal and deception. I don't know exactly how this will turn out. I don't know if I'll get everything back or if she'll succeed in her schemes. But I do know one thing: I'm done trusting her, done believing her lies. From now on, I'll fight for what's rightfully mine, and I'll do whatever it takes to make her face the consequences of her actions. It's not just about the money anymore. It's about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. And I swear I'll come out of this stronger, because I have to. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal meetings, private investigations, and endless nights of trying to piece my life back together. Of course, kept up her act, crying, pleading, saying she was sorry and that she never meant to hurt me. She'd come to the house begging for another chance, acting like I was the one who'd lost his mind. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her tears, her fake remorse, and I knew she was just trying to manipulate me again. She thought that by acting like the victim, she could get away with everything. Well, I wasn't going to let her. I'd been working with a lawyer, Sarah, who was sharp as hell. She explained my options clearly. I could fight her in court over the house, the business, and the money she'd stolen from me. I also had proof of her affair, forged signatures, and her attempts to hide assets. The more I learned, the angrier I got. I realized she'd been planning this for months, probably even longer. She's always been good at hiding her true colors, but now there was no hiding it. The woman I married turned out to be a complete manipulative bitch. One of the biggest shocks was discovering that I'd already started working with Mark on their new business. She'd been funneling money into their startup, something about a marketing firm, while simultaneously pretending to work on saving our marriage. She kept insisting she wanted to work things out, but her actions told a different story. They'd been meeting at hotels, discussing plans, and even signing contracts behind my back. I found emails between her and Mark where they talked about closing the deal and getting rich quick, all while I was at home, clueless. What made everything worse was her attempt to turn the kids against me. She'd tell them I was trying to ruin their family, that I was crazy and jealous. I could see her coaching them, planting seeds of doubt. It broke my heart because I didn't want the kids to suffer, but I also knew was using them as pawns. She'd always been bitchy about how she wanted everything her way, and now she was doing it with the kids' innocence. I felt so powerless, yet I knew I had to fight for them too. Meanwhile, Mark was pushing her even harder. They started their business and kept telling me it was the big break, the future of our family. But I saw it for what it was, a way for her to control more money, more assets, and eventually leave me with nothing. She convinced me to sign over our house, promising it was for the best. But now I realize she only did it because she was planning her escape. She's always been good at making promises she had no intention of keeping. The legal battle was escalating quickly. I filed for an injunction to freeze her accounts, stop her from liquidating assets, and prevent her from signing any more documents. I also filed for full custody of the kids, knowing she'd try to manipulate them into thinking I was the bad guy. I wanted to protect what little was left of my dignity and my assets. But I also felt a deep sense of betrayal. How could she do this to me, to us? She'd convinced me to trust her, and now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative bitch who'd do anything to get what she wanted. The most painful part was realizing how much I'd been blind. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? I'd always thought was just a little bitchy sometimes, but I never imagined she was capable of this level of deception. It's like I married a stranger, one who was plotting her escape behind my back all along. And the worst part, she's now trying to claim half of the profits from the business they started together, even though she's been cheating on me and lying from day one. I read the legal papers she filed. She's claiming I have no right to the profits because I didn't contribute enough. That's laughable considering I've been the one working my ass off to keep everything afloat. I also discovered that she'd been secretly draining our savings, transferring money out, hiding assets, and even opening new bank accounts in her name. She's a master manipulator, and I had to work fast to catch her before she could clean out everything. I had my lawyer send cease and desist notices, and we started investigating her financials thoroughly. I couldn't believe how much she'd lied and how she'd planned this entire betrayal for months. Despite all this, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. Yeah, I was devastated, angry, and humiliated, but I also knew I was finally seeing the truth. Wasn't the woman I thought I married. She was a manipulative, greedy bitch who'd been using me from the start, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was determined to fight for my rights, for my house, my savings, and my dignity. I knew this was going to be a long, ugly battle, but I was ready. I had no choice but to stand my ground. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully recover from this, if I'll ever trust someone again after being so betrayed. But I also know I won't let her win. I won't let her walk away with everything I've worked for. I've started building a case, gathering evidence, and preparing for what's next. This is just the beginning of a fight I never wanted to have, but I refuse to be the victim anymore. I'll do whatever it takes to get my life back, because I deserve that much. At least, the legal process was dragging on, but I felt a strange sense of clarity amid the chaos. Kept up her fake tears and protests, claiming I was ruining her life and that I was overreacting again. She'd come to the house, begging me to just forget everything, crying about how she still loved me and that she'd never meant for it to get this far. But I wasn't buying any of it. I saw through her crocodile tears. She was just trying to manipulate me again to get her way. She'd always been good at pretending to be the victim, but I knew the truth now. She was a liar, a cheat, and a user. I had my lawyer, Sarah, working tirelessly behind the scenes. We filed motions to freeze her assets, prevent her from selling or transferring anything further, and to declare the signatures she forged null and void. I also had her served with papers to contest her claims for half the profits of the business she and Mark had started. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence, more texts, emails, bank records. Every piece of proof was another nail in her coffin. It was clear she'd been planning this for a long time, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. One of the most shocking revelations came when I uncovered her plan to secretly transfer money into offshore accounts. She'd been funneling our savings into accounts in the islands, probably thinking I'd never find out. I felt sick reading those emails, her talking about hiding assets and protecting our future, while she was secretly preparing her escape. That was the moment I realized how deep her betrayal went. She'd been lying and scheming for months, maybe even years, and I'd been blind to it all. Meanwhile, the kids were caught in the middle of this mess, was doing her best to paint me as the villain, telling them I was trying to take their house away, that I was mean and crazy. She'd even coached them on what to say if they talked to anyone about what was happening. It broke my heart to see her manipulate them so openly, but I knew I had to stay strong for their sake. I filed for full custody, knowing she'd try to turn them against me, but I had enough evidence of her lying and her affair to make a strong case. I wanted to protect them from her lies and from her manipulations. The court hearings were intense. Showed up in her best victim costume, crying and pleading, claiming I was destroying our family and that she only did it because she was lost and confused. Mark wasn't even there, but I knew he was behind the scenes egging her on. I presented all my evidence, text messages, bank statements, forged signatures, emails. I wanted the judge to see her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd betrayed her vows and tried to steal everything I had. And I think I succeeded. The judge ordered her assets frozen, appointed a forensic accountant to track her financial moves, and scheduled a full hearing to decide on the house, the business, and custody. Throughout all this, his attitude didn't change much. She kept insisting she was doing everything for the family, that she loved the kids and me, and that I was just jealous of her success with Mark. But her words rang hollow. I could see the lies behind her eyes, the desperation too. Save her own skin. She was trying to spin everything as my fault, as if I was the one who'd been cheating and scheming all along. But I knew better now. She was the one who'd been lying, cheating, and manipulating me from the start. I also started to realize that her plans to take half the profits from her and Mark's business were just another tactic to squeeze as much as she could out of me. She was claiming I had no rights because I'd signed away the house, but I had evidence that her signatures were forged and that I'd been coerced into signing those documents. I was starting to see how she'd carefully crafted this entire scheme, lying, cheating, stealing, and I was just beginning to fight back. And honestly, it felt good. It felt like I was finally taking control of my life again. The emotional toll was enormous. Every day I felt like I was walking through a minefield, waiting for the next bombshell. I was angry, humiliated, and exhausted, but I also felt a flicker of hope. Hope that I could get out of this mess, that I could rebuild what she'd tried to destroy. I kept telling myself that I'd be okay, that I'd come out stronger on the other side. But some nights I still lay awake, replaying her lies, wondering how I missed all the signs, how I trusted her for so long. It's a bitter pill to swallow, realizing you married a woman who was only out for herself. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the warning signs earlier. I wish I'd trusted my gut more and not been so blind to her bitchiness, her manipulations, her lies. But I also know that I can't change the past. All I can do now is fight for my future, for my rights, and for my dignity. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who your real friends are and what kind of person you don't want to be with. I'm still processing everything, still trying to hold it together, but I refuse to let her win. I will get through this. I have to. The courtroom finally felt like the I'd been preparing for months. Sat there, her face flushed with anger and desperation, trying to maintain her false innocence while her lawyer argued that I was trying to sabotage her future. But I had all the evidence, texts, emails, forged signatures, bank records, and I laid it out in front of the judge with a steady voice. I told the court about her affair, her manipulation, her scheme to steal everything I'd worked for. I explained how she'd lied about her meetings, secretly transferred our savings offshore, and forged my signature to take control of the house. I made it clear that I wasn't going to let her walk away with half of my life's work. The judge listened carefully, and after a long pause, he ordered a full forensic audit of her financials and assets. He also granted full custody of the kids to me, citing her pattern of manipulation and her affair as reasons to prioritize their stability and safety. The order to freeze her assets was a heavy blow for her, and I could see her frustration boil over. She yelled, crying that I was ruining her life. But I didn't care anymore. I knew I'd done everything I could to prove her guilt, and the court was finally seeing through her lies. In the weeks that followed, things started to change. The court appointed a neutral accountant to evaluate the business and the assets she'd tried to claim. I was relieved to learn that her claims to half the profits were baseless. She'd been trying to muscle her way into control, but I had the evidence to prove she was just a manipulative user. The house was awarded back to me, and her attempts to transfer assets offshore were halted. She was hit with a hefty fine for forging my signature and hiding assets, and I finally felt like I was reclaiming what was rightfully mine. But the emotional scars ran deep. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, so angry it took everything I had not to lash out at her in court. I'd trusted her for so long, believed in our vows, and she'd thrown it all away for some affair and greed. Still, I knew I had to stay strong for myself, for the kids. Seeing her in court, I realized just how much she'd changed, how much she'd lied and manipulated to get what she wanted. And I knew I'd never forget the pain, but I also knew I had to move forward. The hardest part was watching her attempt to spin things to paint herself as the wronged wife, even as she was caught red-handed. She kept insisting she only did it for us, that she was confused, that she made mistakes. But I saw her for what she really was, a bitchy, selfish woman who only cared about herself. Her tears, her sobs, they didn't fool me anymore. I knew her game, and I was done playing along. In the end, I realized that the true victory wasn't just winning the legal battles or reclaiming my assets. It was finally seeing her for what she was, someone who'd lied, cheated, and manipulated her way through our marriage. I'd been blinded by love or maybe just naivety, but now I saw clearly. I learned to trust my instincts and to be cautious of people who seem too good to be true. I also learned that sometimes, the only way to survive betrayal is to fight back and reclaim what's yours. Today, I'm still healing, still rebuilding. I've moved out of the house, started fresh, and focused on giving my kids a stable environment free from her chaos. I've cut ties with no contact, no regrets. I don't hate her. But I definitely don't trust her anymore. I hope she gets whatever she deserves, but I know I'll be better off without her. I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to find strength, to stand up for yourself, and to come out the other side smarter and more resilient. Looking back, I wish I could tell anyone going through something similar. Trust your gut, keep evidence, and don't let anyone manipulate or steal from you. Betrayal hurts like hell, but it also teaches you who your real friends are and what you're truly capable of. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity, strength, and a new perspective on life. And honestly, I feel free, free from her lies, her manipulations, and her bitchy games. That's the real victory.